G'day, this is Brian Midway and from Grace Canberra. This is Brian Midway from Grace Canberra, and I just wanted to say some things about the current situation. If you're from our congregation, then please have a listen. If you're not, you can still have a listen. But I just wanted to let you know some of the things that are going on and to encourage you to respond to this situation in a way that is characteristic of someone from who's a citizen of the kingdom of heaven and who is a servant of the kingdom of God, and not just as a person who is separated from those resources and that identity. Because in the Bible it says, this is Peter from the first letter of Peter, and he says, we are a royal priesthood, a holy nation. We're a people belonging to God. And in the old translation, those of you who are old enough like me to remember it, it said we are a peculiar people, And so the part of the peculiar nature, that's a funny word now, but of course, I don't know whether you realise this, but the word comes from Latin, and the Latin was translated from Greek, and the Greek, the reason why the translators from Greek to Latin used that word was because it referred to a really special deal. It referred to some possessions that a slave would own. Slavery was big time in the Roman Empire, and slaves were considered to be, worth nothing more or less than the chair I'm sitting on. If this chair were broken, I'd throw it out and I'd get a new one, or whatever. But in those days, some slaves, of course, were treated really kindly by their masters because they were of their quality and because of the quality of the person of the master. But when they were treated well, they were given the opportunity to earn money for themselves and have possessions, and very often slaves' possessions, that is, the possessions that were made possible by a kind master, were called their peculium. Their peculium, that is, something that belonged to a slave by right, and it was actually protected by Roman law. And so the peculium was the possession belonging to a favoured slave. Now, I've got no doubt as to why the translators of the Latin, the Vulgate version, chose that word, because we are God's peculium. We are God's special possession. And I think it says in one of the modern translations, a people belonging to God. And so for that reason, we act differently because of our belonging. And sadly, this is often a challenge to us because we are so challenged by the world to be forced into its mould. And so when the world is afraid, we're afraid. When the world freaks out, we freak out for the same reasons, not logical reasons. There is reason to be afraid for some people today because they're being treated horribly. But very often the culture of fear comes around us for no reason. And so that's why I think the challenge for us today is to not be afraid of the coronavirus, nor to be somehow thwarted in our capacity to serve God or to be the people of God. And so at this time, we need to think clearly about what that represents, how that is lived out in these circumstances. Otherwise, we become just like everybody else who doesn't have an awareness, who doesn't believe in God, trust in God, who doesn't have an experience of God, who doesn't know things from God. So whatever you see out there, whatever comes through the news, and it's coming through thick and fast right now, we have another source of news, and that is the news of the promise of God and the news of our encounter and experience with God. And so that needs to shape. That's the even more real reality that we live in. We live in this world of divided reality, the reality that we can see, which is temporal, and the reality we can't see, which is eternal. And so part of that eternal inheritance of us is to not be afraid, is to be diligent, to be careful, to be mindful, to be wise, but not be afraid. Fear is not an influential factor in the life of the kingdom of God. In fact, fear has been created as a warning when there's some danger? What if there's no, like right now I'm in a room and there's no danger that I'm aware of in this room. So why should I be afraid if I'm in this room and there's no danger? Well, I could be afraid because I'm fearful of what people think. I could be afraid because of the collective opinion that's around, and that could govern my space. But my space is governed by the fact that I am a child of God. I am an inheritor of the kingdom. I am somebody who possesses trust in the promises of God, and that's why I need to combat that tendency that's going around to be fearful of anything, to panic buy, all that kind of stuff. Now this is not becoming for a child of God. What is becoming for a child of God is to act out of the trust that we have. So same circumstance, different perspective. And so today I want you to be aware of the difference between being diligent and wise and careful and being fearful. And I'm going to talk about that in the very next video. God bless you.